Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 1st of October and we are going to cover one very important topic today, that is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. We talked about this particular law in yesterday's video when we were covering the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. The Armed Forces Special Powers Act and the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act are two very important laws in India for tackling any terrorism and such like activities. So let us look into the details of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. This act was passed in the year 1967 as we can see, and according to this act, what are unlawful activities? Any activity which is targeting secession. Secession means any organization with this agenda of carving out their territory from India. Means they want to separate from India, and by separating they want to join another country or they want to remain as an independent country, it is their choice. But they want to separate from India is called as secession. Like for example Khalistan, they wanted to do it, separate Khalistan for themselves. So that was a secessionist activity. So this unlawful activity was targeted as or called as secession when it was passed in the year 1967. Then other laws were there for targeting terrorism, and laws like TADA, Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Act. It was passed in the year 1985. It came into force in 1987. And when it came into force, there was a sunset clause of 2 years. Sunset clause means after 2 years, this act will automatically get repealed. But in 1989, it was again renewed with a 2-year sunset clause. In 1991, it was again renewed with a 2-year sunset clause. In 1993, it was again renewed with a 2-year sunset clause. And finally, in 1995, it got repealed. It actually became popular for wrong reasons because the government was known to take undue advantage of this particular law, TADA. Then there was another law which was called as POTA, Prevention of Terrorism Activities. Now this particular law was passed by the joint session of the parliament, if you remember from that video. There were only 3 laws passed and this was one such law passed, and this was passed in the year 2002, repealed in 2004. Now these two laws which were targeting terrorism are UAPA is believed to be a predecessor of these laws because UAPA was there in 1967, this passed in 1985 and 2002. So UAPA was a predecessor of these two laws. But however, when these two laws were in force, UAPA was also in force. But when these two laws were repealed, TADA and POTA, the provisions of terrorism which were there in these laws were now incorporated in UAPA in the year 2004. So now UAPA contained unlawful activities as secession activities plus terrorist activities in 2004. UAPA was only for organizations, not individuals, until 2019. In 2019, individuals were also included under the ambit of UAPA. So let us look into this. Now just imagine any unlawful activity which you do. Unlawful activity is kind of any activity by which you intend to harm the territorial integrity or national integrity of the country. And it is left to the authorities to interpret whether any of your activity is an illegal activity or not. Like if there is a match between India and Pakistan and you are supporting Pakistan, Pakistan wins that match, you are celebrating it, that activity can also be considered as an unlawful activity under this law. This actually was considered when certain students from Kashmir University and Chandigarh, they were arrested by the government under UAPA. Now once you are arrested under UAPA, it is very difficult to get bail. That is section 43D5 of this act, which makes it extremely difficult for you to get bail. So, one, you are at the whims and fancies of the interpretation of the authorities. If they interpret any activity done by you is unlawful activity, you will be behind the bars. Once you are behind the bars, it will not be easy to come out because bail provisions are very stringent. And something like this happened with a person named as K.A. Najib. K.A. Najib was arrested under UAPA in Kerala, and he was there behind the bars for 5 years without even a single hearing in the courts. The judiciary process is how much effective we all know. Then this matter came to the Supreme Court. A PIL was filed. The Supreme Court took up this case for hearing in 2021 and granted bail to K.A. Najib. Supreme Court clearly said that when the fundamental rights of individuals are being violated, those will melt the rigors of bail provisions of UAPA. Means those will be above, fundamental rights will be above the bail provisions, the stringent bail provisions under UAPA. A similar viewpoint was adopted by the Delhi High Court in the very same year when it granted bail to 3 convicts. These 3 people were jailed by the authorities during the CAA and NRC protests in Delhi in 2020. But yes, the provisions of bail are very stringent. It is left to the interpretation of the authorities whether any activity done by you is an unlawful activity or not. And this makes this law controversial and a stringent law. This gives the state unauthorized, I would say exemplary powers. So let us look into the details of this UAPA 1967. It was first promulgated in 1967 to target secessionist organizations, which we saw. Here we are talking about organizations only. So till 2019, UAPA was talking about organizations only, not individuals. Considered to be a predecessor of laws such as TADA, Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Act, passed in 1985, and Prevention of Terrorism Act, passed in 2002. Repealed in 1995, repealed in 2004. Now only UAPA was left and all the provisions of terrorism was brought under UAPA. Aims at effective prevention of unlawful activities in India. This particular law. Unlawful activities refer to any action taken by an individual or organization. Now this individual word was included in 2019 in this definition. Intended to disrupt the territorial integrity and sovereignty of India. So if you are doing any activity like you are cheering for Pakistan, that can be harmful for the sovereignty of India. That was the interpretation of the security forces, and on that pretext the students, they were arrested. The act assigns absolute power to the central government by way of which the center deems an activity as unlawful. It can interpret in whichever way it wants. So it gives this power of interpretation to the authorities. Key provisions. Punishment under this law. When I talk about punishment under this law, punishment maximum is death penalty. They'll hang you till death. Second is life imprisonment. That is the second most rigorous punishment. 7 years, 14 years, 21 years, depending on the nature of crime you have committed. Then both Indian and foreign nationals can be booked under this law. It will be applicable to the offenders in the same manner even if the crime is committed on foreign land outside India. So this provision is quite interesting. Charge sheet. Now charge sheet, let's suppose the police has arrested me. Now police will do its investigations. What I have, which law I have violated, which the provisions of which particular laws, which section I have violated, they will do their investigations. Then they will frame charges against me and they will submit those charges in the form of charge sheet in the courts. Then the courts will, judge whether, I have actually violated or not. My lawyer will be there, their lawyer will be there, and they will be fighting the case. Now the court gives, or actually in the law, there is 180 days time given to the police personnel for filing the charge sheet in the court. And above that, they can extend this time also by seeking permission from the court. So once I am arrested, so minimum for 180 days, so I am gone behind the bars, means for 6 months I am behind the bars, because that is the time period when charge sheet is being framed, and the police authorities, they take their own time in framing the charge sheet, and they at times seek extension also. Amendments in this act. First amendment came in 2004 when POTA was repealed. Prevention of Terrorism Act was repealed and provisions of terrorism were included in this. Now, Terrorist Act was added in unlawful activities. Earlier secessionism was there. Now secession plus Terrorist Act, both are unlawful activities. And when this happened, under UAPA, 34 outfits were banned. 34 organizations were banned. The noted 2 organizations which were banned under UAPA, first was SIMI, Students Islamic Movement of India. This was actually an organization which was earlier promoting the interest of the Muslim youth and not allowing the Western influences on them. Later on, it turned into a militant organization after acts like Babri Masjid demolition and all happened in the country. And second such noted organization which was banned, it was among these 34 outfits, was CPI Maoist. The Naxals, they are called as. So they were banned under UAPA. So unlawful activities referred to actions related to secession and session plus terrorism. 2019 amendment. When I talk about the 2019 amendment, it empowers the designated individuals as terrorists on certain grounds. So now individuals have come into picture. The Act empowers the Director General of NIA, National Investigative Agency, to grant approval of seizure or attachment of property when the case is investigating by the said agency. So let's suppose a case is being investigated by NIA. While investigation, NIA is empowered to seize the properties, and that is why NIA is presently seizing the properties of many Khalistani sympathizers. That is why this is again in news, and this was included in UAPA by the amendment of 2019. The Act empowers the officers of NIA of the rank of inspector or above to investigate cases of terrorism, in addition to those conducted by DSP or ACP or above the rank officer in the state. Now this is going to be a bone of contention, because see, NIA, which is of the center, these two, DSP or ACP in the state, are there under the state police, and law and order maintenance per se is under the ambit of state government. So here center and state, there will be a conflict, and they both are doing the same thing, that is investigating cases of terrorism in addition to those conducted by these people. So it will be a violation of federalism, because center is overpowering, or I would say interfering too much in the powers of the state. That is one such criticism of this also. Next, personal or financial information of an individual designated as a terrorist can be shared with various Western agencies also. Now all these happened in the 2019 amendment. Now when I talk about the issues related with the law, there are multiple issues. Some of you might have sensed also by now, but let us decode one by one. First is misuse of the law by the state, since it is the prerogative of the state to interpret in the way it wants. So according to the National Crime Records Bureau data, NCRB data, from 2016 to 2019, around 4231 FIRs were filed under UAPA, and obviously government was filing these FIRs, out of which 112 cases have been resulted in convictions only. More than 4000 FIRs, 112 have been proven that they were actually doing unlawful activities. Now this highlights the misinterpretation, the level of misinterpretation by the government. Second, vague definition of terrorist act. The definition of a terrorist act under UAPA is basically ambiguous, and terrorist act can be defined as any activity which includes the death of or injuries to any person, damage to any property is terrorism. So Anything can be defined as terrorism. Like if you are going on the street and you happen to get into a fight with someone due to any XYZ reason and you beat him, you could be booked under UAPA because, if you are causing injuries to any person, so that is an act of terrorism. It all depends on the interpretation. Then denial of bail, we talked about it. 43D5, section of 43D5 of this particular law actually is very stringent, which this particular provision is for bail, and bail is not granted easily. It says that it prevents the release of any accused person on bail if police have filled the charge sheet that there are any reasonable grounds for believing that accusation against such person is prima facie true. Means if the police has filed a charge sheet and in that charge sheet the police has said that we believe that this is true, bail will be denied by the court, because court will say that you are doing unlawful activities, we cannot take risk, we cannot let you out in the public, maybe you'll spread it again, and police believes it is true. So this is how it is there. Pendency of trials. Now the Indian judiciary, how efficient it is. So Tariq pe Tariq is quite common, and that person K.A. Najib, which we talked about, did not get even a single date for hearing in the district court or the state high court also. Then he had to appeal to the Supreme Court. Hello, my fundamental right is getting violated, justice denied, or justice delayed is getting justice denied. Then the Supreme Court took it. Anarchy by the state. It gives the state authority vague powers to detain and arrest individuals who it believes to be indulged in terrorist activities. So the state's interpretation. Authority is there with the state. State gives itself more powers vis-a-vis individual liberty guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution. Article 21 guarantees right to life. So the state is assuming more power and can take our right to life. Undermining federalism. Some experts feel that it is against federal structure since it neglects the authority of the state police in terrorism cases. So that which I was telling you, investigation by NIA and then investigation by ACP rank officers from the state. So it undermines the spirit of federalism because center and state both are there doing the same work. Center is interfering increasingly in the state's activities. So this is also there. Now observation by courts. So we've talked about K. Najib multiple times now. So in Supreme Court, there was a case, Union of India versus K. Najib in 2021. And it held that despite restrictions on bail under UAPA, constitutional courts can still grant bail on the grounds that the fundamental rights of the accused have been violated. And here, fundamental rights of Mr. K. Najib were violated. You know why? The court held that the rigors of UAPA bail restrictions will melt down where there is no likelihood of trial being completed within a reasonable time. So if trial is not being completed within a reasonable time, then bail will be granted. The rigors of bail will melt down means these restricted provisions or stringent provisions of bail will not be there. Now this judgment of the Supreme Court was upheld by the Delhi High Court in June 2021, and three persons, Natasha Narwal, Devangana Kalita and Asif Iqbal Tanha, these three people were also granted bail. They were arrested during the Delhi riots under UAPA in 2020 February-March. So they were also released because they did not have hearing also from 2020 till 2021 June. So these are the two notable cases by the judiciary, one by Supreme Court, one by Delhi High Court. We should know both of these with respect to this particular law. Now, what should be the way forward? I'm not saying that this law should not be there. This law definitely should be there because we need to target terrorism. We need to target unlawful activities. We cannot compromise on our territorial integrity and sovereignty. We should give a stern message. But yes, we should also make sure as responsible government that this law is actually not being misused. On the other hand, judiciary also should be very much prompt on hearing cases under UAPA. Either a special court can be conducted for hearing the cases under UAPA so that if anyone is innocent, should be released timely. So let us look point by point. Misuse of this law should be prevented, which we just talked about. Effective law enforcement should be there. It needs to ensure that there are effective law enforcement mechanisms with checks and balances to prevent and punish terrorist attacks. High standards of proof must be used by the government to prove any unlawful activity by any person. It should not be like you are booked for any activity, any or the other activity as an unlawful activity. That will be misuse of the law. Then role of judiciary is also important, because if it is effective, then only justice will not be denied. And when justice will not be denied, justice will be served. So this is all from this particular law. This law and AFSPA both are very, very important for us to have. But yes, we've studied about the shortcomings or the controversies related to these laws. Both should be tackled. Responsible government is equal to responsible governance. Responsible judiciary is equal to justice served. And we, the people of India, want justice, and we, the people of India, want good governance. Above all, we, the people of India, want development also to happen. So, this is it what we want. And this is it from today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow with some more important piece of news, and we will be discussing them in a holistic manner. Till then, you guys keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, and most importantly, keep revising. Jai Hind, Namaste.